Hey you, yes, you! Do you fashion yourself as a survivalist? Do you often find yourself thinking that if a spontaneous social collapse happened today, you'd be ready? Do you look in disgust and contempt at the people around you, walking down the street, unaware of how situational and fragile their simplistic existence truly is? Do you wish you could break free from the chains of society? Does the thought of being your own man, hunting your own sustenance, finding your own shelter, consume your thoughts at every waking moment? If so, I got a game for you. Rain World is a 2D platformer and survival game. It's your typical indie slop with its cute and quirky pixelated art style, its clear artistic vision, and of course, its 10 novels worth of backstory and lore scattered about in the form of obscure vague dialogue and small environment cues. Puzzle pieces that your dumbass simian brain sure as shit is incapable of putting together by yourself. As such, it's also one of those games. You know, the kind that allows people to make a quintillion hour-long YouTube videos detailing lore and trivia. And if you so much as dare to watch one small video explaining the basic concepts, then your fate is sealed. You will now be receiving more of these videos, clogging your feed for the rest of your days in this earthly realm, ready to spoon-feed into your soft gray matter everything from the fauna and flora, to random background details, to obscure gameplay mechanics, to how the coloration of the lizards matches the colors associated with the 7 chakras. In short, if you're fond of schizophrenic rabbit holes, autistically scouring for minuscule clues, wild extrapolation and pondering on the metaphysical significance of random nonsense, and sleepless nights on a doom scroll that will only end in the early hours when you pass out of exhaustion with your phone in your hand, then Rain World should appeal to you. If you find the gameplay too challenging or intimidating, you can, at the very least, entertain yourself with the lore, and become like one of those absolute nerds that watches Warhammer lore content, despite never having bought a miniature and having the painting skills of a drunken orangutan. That's me, I am that nerd. Rain World is also a great source of background gameplay for fellow YouTube creators in the commentary and video essay genres. It makes for perfect background footage for when you're tired of Overwatch, CSGO gameplay, and shitty synthwave effects, and you need something else to spice up your video as you clip between your 3 rand Sona PNGs and monologue for 30 fucking minutes about the based, anti-capitalist themes of a children's movie, or complain about the woke leftists as they attempt to undermine your traditional values and take away important cultural relics such as the cock veins on Snickers bars. So, let's get the basic premise out of the way. You play as a slug cat. Now, looking at this little guy, he might seem eerily familiar to some of you, but rest assured, it's not what you think. Slug cats are actually these cute little rodent-looking things. They're relatively agile, they can cram themselves into tight spaces, and they're capable of minimal tool usage, having the average IQ of a recently registered Twitter user, before their inevitable metamorphosis. The basic gameplay loops are rather simple. You need to eat, and you need a place to sleep. Rain World takes place in the post-apocalyptic husk of an industrial complex in a world long abandoned by its original inhabitants. And for reasons that will be explained later, the entire surface is subject to constant flash floods caused by rain so intense that the pressure will tenderize your soft, fleshy body into paste. As such, your average gameplay consists of waking up in your shelter, exploring the area around for some food, avoiding predators when you can and fighting if you must, finding another shelter or going back to your previous one, and then hibernating in safety, saving your progress and allowing you to continue forward. Though the objective may seem simple, I assure you that Rain World is quite the ass-clenching experience for a variety of reasons. For one, you're on a constant timer to fill your stomach and find a safe spot to crash, and the time you have to accomplish this can vary quite substantially. On some days you have extra food stashed away and shelter already assured, and enough leftover time to wander around, explore, and look at all the pretty environments. On other days you'll be struggling, crammed inside of a pipe, trying to figure out a way around the dangerous wildlife looking to have you participate in the food chain, as you look desperately for the last pip of food you need to go sleep and save. Sometimes you might even be forced by fast coming rain into sleeping on an empty stomach, which in addition to not saving your game, forces you to find the extra food the next day, while making you weaker and less mobile. As if the threat of starvation and getting turned into a pancake by the rain wasn't enough, I remind you that Rain World is, above all, an ecosystem simulator. And I do mean that. All the enemies in your path aren't there for you specifically, they're there to get food, same as you are. Just so happens that your tasty little ass looks quite appealing to a lot of bigger creatures, and you can be assured that once you're out there in the streets, everyone will be wanting a piece of you if they can take it. You are part of an intricate food chain that connects basically every single creature in the game, which means that sometimes even your would-be consumer will himself be attacked in turn, giving you a chance to escape. Finally, there's the terrain. The industrial complex in which you're stuck is both very large and very hazardous. A lot of the game's sections involve tight, precise jumps over death pits or crawling through dark, tight passageways where death can be looming in any corner if you're not careful. Playing this game for a while really puts you into the mindset of an animal. The game is essentially an interactive National Geographic documentary, and you might often find yourself narrating your death in sensual lyrical prose as you try to imitate the slick, captivating voice of David Attenborough and watch in frustration as your limp corpse is carried off to a den to be consumed. I can't stress it enough, this game can be brutal. It's not exactly a rage game in the traditional sense, but hopping between shelters while getting the food you need can sometimes be an exercise in tense, precise execution, and the smallest mistake could fling you unceremoniously back into the cycle. I will now be detailing my journey through the game, so heavy spoilers ahead. However, some clarifications. First of all, at the time of recording, I have only purchased and played through the base game and have little interest in getting the DLC. You should know though that the majority of the lore that we do know about comes from the Downpour DLC, so if you're in it for the story above all else, keep that in mind. The little you get from the base game is sparse, cryptic, vague, not to mention a huge pain in the ass to actually see for yourself during gameplay. So be ready to both shell out the extra cash and spend the extra time getting good if you want to experience the story the proper way. Secondly, if you're a big fan of this game, be aware that my knowledge of the lore is surface level at best. I know all the basics of the timeline and the main players involved, but I wouldn't call myself an expert or anything. I find this game captivating in the sense that going through my daily routine is. As you perform the necessary daily tasks that, though mundane, allow your continued existence, you get the time to ponder silently about your life, the world, and your place in it. As a result, this video is less of a review and more of an incoherent diatribe. It's basically a collection of my thoughts and opinions as they evolve through the game. If there's some piece of lore that you know of that would contradict or recontextualize my opinions, rest assured, I hear you, and I don't care. Feel free to rant about it in the comments though. With that out of the way, let's begin. Now, I only have footage from one of my later runs, so for this early section, my spastic editing and the gameplay I stole from other people will have to suffice. So, setup. There's 3 difficulties in the game, presented by the 3 characters here. For your first playthrough, I recommend Survivor, which is the default. Why do I recommend the default? It's a question of principle, that's why. Don't lie to yourself. You got this game to prove that you're not a weakling, that if society were to fall, you could make it on your own, that your boomer relatives are wrong about you and you would not starve to death without 24/7 access to Uber Eats. Easy difficulty isn't just shameful, it's fundamentally missing the point. Monk is for the faint of heart, the weak-minded and the weak-willed. Shelters are more plentiful, you need less food to survive, and the dangerous wildlife is more prone to just ignoring you. If you're a beta cuck, playing this game from your Mechanicus tech crypt with an IV tube pumping soil into your blood flow, this is your ideal starting point. For those of us with pride in ourselves and egos far too big to admit defeat, Survivor offers a balanced playthrough, providing a reasonable challenge while still giving you some freedom to experience the world. You'll be staring at this white slimy little creature for a good few hours as your repeated deaths hone your skills until you get into the right state of mind. I won't lie to you, my first experiences with this game were brutal to say the least. The starting area outskirts is baby mode personified. There's no death pits, the level geometry is very accommodating, paths around the main threats are plentiful, and there's plenty of flat open areas for engaging in combat if you feel like it. However, my brain capacity was yet to be awakened this early on, and my inadequacies were exposed very quickly and quite often. You'll encounter your first lizards, which are a constant wherever you go in Rain World and will serve as one of the primary threats. They come in a variety of color-coded forms, and only experience, usually at the cost of many deaths, will give you the knowledge and skill to face them. All lizards have armored heads, which makes engaging them head-on dangerous. Most lizards require multiple spear throws to kill, and while spears are easy enough to find, you can only carry one on you at a time. This means that you'll often be forced to approach the lizard to get the spear back, which gives it an opportunity to turn around in a pinch and snack on your plump ass. I learned this slowly, over time, and refused to check the wiki for a good while. Also, because I'm used to loading screen tips being completely fucking useless, I made the severe mistake of not reading a single one. As a result, during these early stages I was still in my base, savage form. My life consisted of subsisting on the meager scraps I could scavenge from the local area, avoiding every single fight and running away like a bitch at the first sign of trouble. I grew bitter at the world, secluding myself in my own pride, ranting constantly about my misfortunes and becoming unreasonably angry at unavoidable facts of life. Instead of improving myself and finding achievable short-term goals, I deluded myself with high-minded ambitions of beating the game at all costs with no actionable plan to guide me. Sheer fucking spite motivated me not to quit, no matter how many times I got absolutely destroyed, usually in the exact same spot in the exact same way. I fell into a destructive spiral of self-loathing, making meager progress through a constant war of attrition against the game and my own fatigue. Many nights did I lay awake, staring at the ceiling in dread and hateful anticipation of the morning, by which I mean noon since I went to sleep at 7 a.m. Slowly, gradually, and painfully through many deaths and careful observation of the environment, I managed to progress, and started properly exploring the map beyond the starting area. Now, as a new player with little context, I had zero fucking idea what to do or where to go, so I basically just picked a direction, usually the one I found first, and went as far as I could manage. I ended up taking a rather unusual route in my first playthrough, going eastward on the map till I came into the drainage system and then going downwards through the filtration system. I would later learn that what I did here was basically beeline it to the endgame area with no preparation, no idea what I was doing, and absolutely no chance to progress. Which explains why that run ended with me getting softlock in the drainage system when I slept in a shelter next to a karma gate and the only way out was by swimming, which I just didn't know how to do. Oh, right, I didn't even talk about karma. Rainworld's map is split into regions, and to travel between these regions you need to pass through karma gates, which only let you through if your street cred with the gods is high enough. Karma is essentially these 5 levels here, which increase if you continuously survive cycles successfully and decrease when you die. You may also come across and eat karma flowers, which round off our Dark Souls references by giving you a nice little bloodstain you can go pick up your shit from when you die. The flower bursts out of your decaying corpse like a fucking xenomorph in the place you meet your demise, letting you break the success streak without losing karma. I recommend being careful on your way back to it because they are in very short supply and you don't get a second chance to get it back. Anyway, where was I? Right. So I made my way to the depths, which is the endgame area where you're supposed to go after you explore around and actually know what the fuck you're doing. I did not. As such, I was not aware that even at max base karma, which I did not have due to repeated deaths in Tom and Jerry-esque escapades with blind lizards in the filtration system, you have no chance of getting through this area at all. There is no food, there are no enemies, and it's actually completely sealed so the rain isn't even an issue. However, there's only one way forward, and that way is blocked by these BDSM blockhead looking fellas here. They're called Guardians, and they're completely passive if you meet certain requirements, which again, I did not. I managed to get past one of them by jumping quickly, however, the next one immediately saw me, took one good look at my face, saw my bottom tier karma, my scuffed, basic ass gear, and my severe lack of bitches, and then him and a buddy of his used some bullshit That's So Raven-like powers to telekinetically pick me up and throw me back down like a wet towel at the gym locker till I died from the blunt force trauma. After they literally wiped the floor with me, I reflected upon my encounter with these foul beings with even more bitterness.
Great. Another gigachat with perfect gym cell genetics rubbing it in my schizo black-pilled sub-5 face. As true cell slugcats are the most oppressed group in society. Billions must die. Let me pass.
No. I can't let you. You're a complete mess, dude.
It's not fair. I made it through the map, I only have one direction to go, I can't even go back because it's already fucking raining and I'll be pulverized when I go outside. Just let me through, you fucking beta cuck.
That's enough out of you, little Chud. Curious that you even made it to me in the state that you're in. Do you know what lies beyond these sacred temple halls?
No. No, I don't. God damn it, what am I doing? I'm going on wild goose chases and I don't even know what I'm after. Dude, it's over. In fact, it's never been more over. Fuck. Whatever. I've made it this far. Why won't you let me pass?
If it's enlightenment you seek, get in line. Many much more deserving than you have tried and failed. Look at you. You don't even grasp the purpose of this place, let alone the extent of your blasphemy by infesting it with your presence. Leave at once.
But, but why? What must I do?
That, I'm afraid, is a question you must find the answer to on your own. Take your time. The cycle binds us all, and time is the one thing you have. Make good use of it. Maybe one day you'll come back to me in a better state.
Fine, just... please, tell me. What am I doing wrong?
You wallow in your pity and in the trappings of your flesh. I can see that the material world weighs heavily upon you, but in this I cannot help you. Only you possess the power to free yourself from the shackles of matter. Your spirit has potential with the One, in that I believe, but it isn't refined. Reflect deeply on the nature of things, and come to understand your place in them. This path we guard, my friend, does contain your salvation, your escape, but you are not prepared for it. When you are, return to us. It will grant you access into the depths of the temple. If your faith is strong and your wisdom does not falter, you will find what you seek.
Very well. Very well, I will try. You just wait. The incel uprising starts now. When I get back, I'm gonna be a money-maxed, bone-mashed New Lord. I'm gonna burn your longhouse to the ground. You just wait. You haven't seen the last of me.
I get the feeling this might take a while. This was the point in the game in which my mindset finally adjusted. I dropped the victim mentality. I stopped blaming myself for past mistakes, and got a hold of myself. What I had done in that little escapade was the equivalent of busting into a Shaolin temple covered in mud and with absolutely zero zen. Naturally, the monks busted my balls with a martial arts kick, berated my earthly attachment, and sent me on my merry way. It was time I stopped being a disgusting little basement dweller and grew to become a proper part of the ecosystem. I got a new run going, and this time I had my mind on straight. I had my eyes on the prize and got my idle hands to work. First order of business, getting good at fighting. Knowing how to scurry around like a little gremlin is valuable, but at some points during the game, be it because of a mistake, getting cornered, or just plain game design inevitability, you will have to fight, and trying to fight Giga Chad wizards that can walk into the gym and curl as much as you can bench with their hoodies on is a bad idea if you don't have a plan. So, basic strat number 1. You have 2 hands and you can carry 2 things on you, plus a third inside your stomach that you can then spit back out when needed. You'll usually want to have a spear in your main hand and a rock in your offhand. Why do you want a rock in your offhand? Simple. Trying to angle a shot on a wizard when he's aware of your presence is nigh fucking impossible, because they'll make sure to always face you head on when they can, and their iron chrome dole of a skull will deflect all the pathetic throws from your weak beta male arms. However, you'll soon learn that they can actually be flipped over with a handy rock in the noggin, which will give you a free shot at their exposed underbelly. This single trick makes fighting a wizard go from basically suicide to actually feasible in a 1v1. You'll also eventually start picking up on the different lizard subspecies and their particular weaknesses. Green lizards are super tanky, but they can't climb shit, so they're pretty easy to avoid. On the contrary, pink lizards can actually climb and have sharper senses, but this means that baiting them to a spot where you can easily angle a throw is easier. As in all games and in real life, knowledge is power. Being aware of the ecological niches and particular adaptations of all your foes will give you an edge over them, allowing you to at last transition from a golem-looking pathetic little simp into a mid-level player. Congratulations! You've now killed your very first few lizards and can gloat spastically over their dead body like a chimpanzee. You're now past the hump of early game and can have some confidence, but you still have a lot to learn and you'll likely still shit yourself the first time you encounter a vulture. This was the place I was at during this early part of the run. I decided that rather than travel downward into the sewer pipes again, I'd instead try my luck going up. I also got myself stuck in a weird ass loop here, so I came to the wrong belief that there's no way to go east on this part of the map. However, that actually turned out to be a boon, since it means I avoided going to the
Shaded Citadel.
Why is that good? Well, first of all, the Citadel is a pitch dark area of the map where the only way for your dumb ass to see where you're going is to kidnap a bioluminescent rat to drag around like a lantern. But you know what? That I can deal with. What I can't deal with is this. This here is called a coalescipede. Now, if you're the skittish kind with some arachnophobic tendencies, I recommend looking away from the screen unless you want to feel a skin crawl. Why are these things called coalescipedes, you ask? This is why. That's right. Shaded Citadel is filled to the fucking brim with these John Carpenter prop looking motherfuckers, which not only scurry around on their daddy long legs, but their preferred method of hunting is pack hunting. They literally connect themselves ass to mouth to form these unholy monstrosities and then jump on your ass. Miss me with that shit. Listen, it's not a question of getting good. I got good at Dark Souls enough to parry and kill anything in Upper Blighttown. Doesn't mean I'm ever going back there. Fuck that. So, yeah, if you don't want to get eaten by giant fucking spiders that transform into a super spider megazord, don't go to Shaded Citadel. You can thank me later. However, if you, have those deep desires, feel free to ignore my advice. It's your life after all. I won't judge. As for me, I decided to climb through a karma gate up here, passed through the industrial complex, and got into the chimney canopy. This area is pretty dope. And as a bonus, before I got here, I encountered my very first vulture. Yeah, that's right, take a good look at this thing, because this meatball-shaped pelican with wings is in fact an apex predator. Now, at this point in the game, I don't think I was even capable of fighting this thing head-on, but you don't have a choice. It always shows up here on this path to the karma gate to try and snack on you. Thankfully, you can just scurry around the pipes to avoid him, as his fat round ass can't fit into most of the tight areas you can. Convenient! Oh, and as for these things, these are called scavengers. They're the villagers of Rain World, if villagers could also throw spears, make DIY explosives, and climb vertical walls. I ignore them. For now. Anyway, the reason I bring the vulture up is this shot right here. This is the shot that would define the playthrough. In a lucky hit, I managed to snag the mask off its face before it flew away. I bring this up for two reasons. One, the mask is both very mechanically useful and thematically important. When you have it on, you lizards will be scared shitless and run away from you for a few seconds. They will eventually wisen up and try to pursue you, but hopefully this will give you a window of opportunity to run past them. As for the theme, well, I'll get to it in a second, but suffice to say, masks in general play a role in the culture of the ancients. That is, the civilization that built these facility grounds, and the many more scattered around the world. This will become important. So anyhow, at this point I was feeling reasonably competent. I had already mastered the game's movement. I was capable of assessing my situation quickly, fighting if I had to, and running away efficiently when I had a clear route. However, I lost hold of me. Rather than being consumed by my bitterness, I came to be consumed by my hubris instead. I had climbed right to the peak of Dunning-Kruger, and I would now be enjoying a nice, comfortable slide down to the pits of self-doubt. Look at the situation here. I ran into a white lizard, which lies in wait for prey and camouflages. He hits me with his tongue, and as I'm fighting for my life to escape, I get a pink lizard on top of that. Seems like I'm fucked, right? So I thought. However, I hit this jump here. Boom! Look at that. I used the lizard's own tongue to get that extra boost I need to catapult myself past him, no sweat. I land on my feet and run away. Ha! That's it! As I run off to get to a shelter and the rain fast approaches, I'm feeling good. I'm on top of the world right now. If lizards can't stop me, what can? Fuck the Guardians, fuck the wildlife, and fuck... Time. It was time, or rather, the lack of it that got me to act so recklessly. But why? I have all the time in the world, don't I, stuck in this never-ending cycle? It makes sense, I suppose. After all, you too, dear viewers, scurry around with permanent hurry through your life as if your time is short. And yet, you too are stuck in a cycle, are you not? Time. It's as a prison of decay, rebirth, and repetition. Think of how many medics who examined carefully the fast-coming death of their patients are themselves now dead. How many sages and seers that foresaw the oblivion of others are themselves in the jaws of oblivion. How many philosophers who wrote such great extents of death and immortality. How many warriors, conquerors, and tyrants who held cruel sway over thousands arbitrarily, wielding life and death as if they were exempt from its flow. Think of how many cities are but rubble under the weight of history. Think of even those you know, how one died to be buried by another, who himself then died to be buried by a third. And all this in so little time. Time. We all seem to have so little time. This death broke me. I'm not sure why. I've definitely had more frustrating deaths before and after, but I spent a good while just staring at the screen in silence. Maybe it was the emotional roller coaster. I fell on top of the world, and just like that, I was back at the bottom. I broke. I decided to take a break from the game, come back with a fresh perspective and my hopes renewed. In the meantime, I also broke my embargo on wiki reading, and I fell into temptation. I started watching some of those really fucking long lore videos on YouTube, since without the DLC, it's not like I was ever gonna experience most of it myself anyway. So, here's the part where I summarize Rainworld's lore to you. Buckle up. It all begins with the Ancients, these tall, possibly avian humanoids that populated the world who had very peculiar naming conventions, naming themselves shit like 19 Spades, Endless Reflection, and 4 Needles and Their Plentiful Leaves. These names are probably chosen because they have huge spiritual or cultural implications for the Ancients, but it legitimately feels like when one of their babies was born, the parents just kind of looked outside the window and named their child the first thing they saw. Anyway, the Ancients were a traditionalist and spiritualist society that put high emphasis on their religious doctrine, which seems to be heavily based off of Buddhism and Hinduism, specifically its conceptions of cyclical reincarnation. Every single creature in Rainworld is subject to the Great Cycle, a never-ending stream of death and rebirth that binds all life. The Ancients sought to escape the cycle, and for this purpose they developed a system of thought centered on rejecting the 5 natural urges of all living beings: violence, procreation, materialism, gluttony, and self-preservation. By shedding these earthly attachments, they sought to achieve a higher state of being and hopefully detach their spirits from the world permanently. However, they threw all that shit out the window one day, as they were mining deep into the earth and discovered that, as it turns out, the entire planet is built on top of an endless ocean of a highly corrosive substance called the void fluid, which perpetually eats away at the bottom of the world as more matter settles on the surface. By harnessing and refining this fluid, the Ancients harnessed a way to produce massive amounts of energy and develop their technology to ridiculous degrees. You might not notice it at first glance through your journey, but basically every single creature in Rainworld is partially biomechanical. That is because the Ancients mastered both material science and genetic engineering, and as such they made biomechanical constructs, which they call purposed organisms, to fulfill the purpose of conventional machines. They did this to such a degree that the majority of the world's fauna and flora are descendants of these purposed beings, as the Ancients effectively wiped out all natural life on the planet. So the Ancients were having the time of their life, enjoying the Industrial Revolution and harnessing the power of the void fluid to fully dissolve themselves in nice cozy baths, skipping the grind of spiritual growth entirely. However, they'd soon discover that escaping the cycle was a lot harder than that, as they found out that if a person still preserved their attachments to the world and their sense of self, a fragment of them would haunt the world as an immortal shadow forever, as not even the void fluid could fully destroy their egos. The sight of these shadows haunted the Ancients to such a degree that they decided that technology had gotten too far. Reject void fluid modernity. Embrace spiritual tradition. You will eat nothing but gravel and tea, and you will be happy. To this end, they blocked off access to the void fluid to anyone that wasn't a fully certified max karma Zen monk, and thought long and hard as to what to do next. The issue of figuring out a way to fully ascend and escape the world for realsies was dubbed the Great Problem, the Grand Dilemma, the Big Task, and a variety of other such ominous names. You'll notice that in all their depictions, the Ancients wear these intricate steampunk masks. Told you that masks were thematically important. The mask, I believe, represents the Ancients' great cultural dilemma and their immensely unearned pride. They thought themselves prisoners of the world and sought to escape it, but they also thought far too highly of themselves not to flex on everyone else on their way out. That is why I believe the mask is so important. If you ever meet a super calm monk or maybe like a Catholic friar or something in your life, you'll notice that they do not wear masks. The Ancients wore these masks supposedly to symbolically shed their attachment to their sense of self, but that claim is absurd on the face of it. Masks are not meant to represent detachment, and they don't do that in any culture. There's plenty of cultures where masks are important spiritual paraphernalia, but that's because these masks represent a shaman or a mystic of some kind taking on the role of a divine or spiritual entity. It's like a representation of body possession. It is never meant to abate the self as the Ancients claim. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Masks are a form of social presentation. They exist to hide your true self from others, to pretend you're somebody that you're not. They are meant to let you take on a role. And lo and behold, that's exactly what the Ancients did. They did not use these masks to abate their sense of self and ego. They made these fucking things out of precious metals and gems and used them as marks of social status. The masks are a representation of the Ancients' profound hypocrisy and the flaws of their worldview. They were supposed to not give a shit. They saw the world as a net that traps you when you struggle and whine, and you should strive to be limp like a jellyfish so you can effortlessly slip past the knots. They strive to be carefree and in peace, but they were burdened by paranoia and selfish ambition. Their solution to this contradiction was to just outsource their ambition to somebody else. To this end, they created the iterators, massive biomechanical superstructures that use a giant internal biome of microbe strata to process insane amounts of information and run several parallel processes simultaneously. The iterators are fully sentient creatures with a sense of self, but they were genetically engineered to solve the ancients' great problem for them. A slight issue: these things take ridiculous amounts of water to cool down and clean the slag that builds up due to their internal microfauna. They quite literally drink the output of an entire riverbed into their system to function. However, this issue only really existed early on with the first iterators, because as they built more and more of these things, they came to realize that they were putting out so much fucking steam that they were creating the rain as it exists today. That's right, the reason the surface is subject to constant hyper-pressurized rain is because the ancients turned the planet's entire water cycle into a jury-rigged cooling mechanism for their biological supercomputers, giving them just enough processing power to run one instance of Skyrim with all sex mods installed. So the water issue was solved. You can place iterators anywhere in the world now, since the rain will come to them no matter what their local water supply is like. Urban planning issue solved, and all it took was making the entire surface basically uninhabitable. So then the ancients decided to go live on top of the iterators instead, far above the cloud layers. However, at some undefined point, their entire society just decided to give up, I guess. For some reason, all their theocratic councils decided that waiting for the great problem to be solved was too much of a hassle, so they forcibly melted their entire population in void fluid baths, Necron style. And that was that. Creates industrial revolution, ruins everything, refuses to elaborate, fucking dies. Ancients basically destroyed the entire planet, fucked off to the afterlife, and left their purposed organisms to slowly evolve and recreate a functional natural ecosystem in the ruins of their civilization. Which means that, when you think about it, Rainworld is literally just all tomorrows, but combined with a bunch of Beat Generation-esque New Age nonsense. And ever since the ancients left, that their iterators have been working, consuming massive amounts of energy, concentrating deeply on the great problem, talking to each other through global communication networks, as their structures slowly decay into inert junk. This whole time, you've been playing in a massive complex constructed around two particular iterators named Five Pebbles and Looks to the Moon. They were built unusually close together because of the circumstances of their water supply, which led to some, problems between them, to say the least. Long story short, there was this other iterator, Sliver of Straw, that broadcasted a triple affirmative, which is a special signal that means an applicable real-world solution to the great problem has been found. However, Sliver of Straw then somehow inexplicably died before revealing the solution, and nobody knows how the fuck she managed that exactly. It's supposed to be impossible for an iterator to kill themselves, and she wasn't on the verge of death of decay beforehand, so her demise left the entire iterator community asking some very disturbing questions. Gossips and theories were spread between private iterator groups, and they split themselves into factions based on what they thought happened. Five Pebbles was a sliverist, which means he believed death was the solution, and that Sliver of Straw broke the taboo on self-destruction on purpose. As a result, he decided to be a little bitch, fall into a pit of existentialist despair, and then work on his own solution independently of anybody else. With some help from another iterator, Pebbles decided to create a purposed organism that would slowly rewrite his entire genome from the inside out, allowing him to break the rules around suicide encoded into their genetics and kill himself. However, this process required him to consume a shit ton of water, and since he was partially built around and above Looks to the Moon, he essentially stole their entire shared water supply, causing Moon to nearly die of dehydration. However, before he could complete his scheme, Moon used her discard admin status to break Pebble's self-imposed comms blackout and forcibly tell him to quit being a bitch. He decided to be an even bigger bitch, seething and crying that Moon ruined his project at the worst possible moment. And ruin it she most certainly did, as Pebbles is now slowly being consumed by Ultra Mega Cancer. A generational L, if I must say. So that leads us to the present. You've spent your entire playthrough crawling around the decaying corpses of two godlike biomechanical supercomputers with depression. Which means that I was wrong. Rainworld is actually all tomorrows combined with I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream if humans all kill themselves before I am God to them, and then layered with New Age nonsense. It's a weird game, to say the least. So anyhow, with this knowledge, what is there to do? Well, obviously I had to go see at least one of these supercomputers in person, and taking a look at the map, I decided that Five Pebbles was my best option. So, no more complaining, no more whining. No more playing by the rules and no more Mr. Nice Guy. The journey to 5 Pebbles' score is long and dangerous, and there will be no shortage of bullshit along the way. This game doesn't want you to play fair. It doesn't want you to think of it as a game with rules. This is life, and life is anything but fair. So, no playing by the book. You gotta take advantage of every little strat you can think of, and to this end, I am here to help you. It's time. Take the red pill, and let me show you how deep this rabbit hole truly goes. There's an infinity of little tips and tricks to get better at Rain World, and no matter what I say, the only way for you to improve is with trial and error. This game has no upgrades, no character progression or anything like that. The only way for you to have more power and control is to become more knowledgeable of the game systems, your enemies, and the tools at your disposal. So, let me share with you some of the things that I have learned. This is by no means a comprehensive guide, but this information will hopefully make your journey a little more bearable and avoid some unnecessary deaths. Tip number 1. Only try to progress on long days. The length of a cycle varies quite a lot, and shelters are usually spaced considerably far apart. Yes, you can run between shelters and make it in time before the rain on the shortest days, but doing so requires a perfect run. Rain World is an RNG heavy game, and at any point during your run you can slightly miss input the jump at the worst moment, have your way blocked by a predator that just refuses to move, or run into any other matter of random bullshit that forces you to wait. Not to mention you need to take some time off your running to go eat every day. So, don't rush it, take your time. On shorter days, explore around the area, identify what predators lurk around and what you need to watch out for. Get a lay of the land, find the places where the level geometry makes fighting and avoiding predators easy and which places you should avoid. You should also find out in which parts of the level you can find food and how long it takes you to run from the food source to the nearest shelter. Which leads me to tip number 2, do proper meal prep. Your main nutrition in Rain World is going to come from 2 sources, bat flies and blue fruit. You can supplement your diet with a lot of other shit, but these 2 are found in basically every single place in Rain World, and you can always rely on finding at least a couple. So here's my golden rule. If you have a choice between the 2, eat the bat flies first and save the fruit for later. Why? Because unlike bat flies, blue fruits are non-perishable, which means you can take them with you to a shelter and they'll still be there to eat the following cycle. Which itself leads me to tip number 3, stock up. You'll usually be spending some time in one place around one shelter or maybe a set of close-by shelters. So build up a stock of supplies inside of them. You can take non-perishable food items with you, which will be safely stored inside the shelter indefinitely. You should also take the time to build up a small stock of spears so you always have something to defend yourself with. There's a variety of other items that can have a lot of utility to you as well. And that leads me to tip number 4, engage in commerce. Remember the scavengers? The villager comparison wasn't just a gag, it's accurate. They will trade you a variety of goods on a fixed exchange rate based on a barter economy, where certain items are worth a certain numerical value. Around the world you'll often find these pearls. The colored ones have lore implications, but if you don't give a shit, they also function the same as the standard gray pearls. They are highly valued by the scavengers, and they'll basically give you any item they have to trade for them. You can also use them to get safe passage through their toll booths scattered around the map. If you trade with them a bunch and help them fight off attacking animals, they'll even start to like you to the point you can get past their tolls free of charge. As for what to trade for, here's the shit you should keep an eye out to get. Explosive spears and grenades do a lot more damage than your usual spears, but they're a one-time use, so get them to fuck shit up in an area where you know has a lot of predators or maybe a vulture you want to kill. If you're running low on regular spears, you can't trade just for those too, as scavengers usually have them by the bucket loads. You can get them easily for free though, so this is a last resort, but it is an option. And lastly, if for reasons stated above you got into your mind you really want to go into the shit at Citadel, make sure to buy a scavenger lantern beforehand. Its light is much more intense than the glowing rats, plus you can easily carry it in your offhand, leaving you a free hand for a spear. The light is intense enough that the light-averse Colecipes will run away from you. Be careful though, because they will lose their aversion to light once they transform into their mega arachnophobia mode. Still, the lantern is a must-have for the Citadel, so go get a pearl to trade for one. Also, if you find one of the scavengers' hidden strongholds, you can, if you want to, steal from their supply without paying anything. However, make sure to only do this if they're not there. This way they won't find out and your reputation won't be affected. More importantly, they won't instantly skewer you on the spot. Now, all these little tips are helpful enough, and they will help you take your gameplay to the next level. No more barely getting by in Rain World. If you follow this advice and hone your practice, you'll be thriving. However, I lied to you. Remember a while ago when I said I had mastered Rain World's movement? Oh, how utterly wrong I was. I am now going to reveal to you the most powerful of secrets, a collection of arcane knowledge of such immense potential that its mere possession will, if you're not careful, consume your very soul. But if you think you have what it takes, young pupil, let me show you. Movement Tech! This game's movement is deceptively complex. The tutorial does jack shit to inform you of anything besides the bare basics of getting around, which can give you the wrong idea. I mean, this game has like 3 action keys and 4 directional keys. How complex can it get? Here's 92 fucking pages of movement tech that the community made into a Google document for you. Is that complex enough? This game doesn't do walking animation GIFs. Every single creature, you included, has their animation stitched on top of a rig that interacts with the environment. This means that these 3 keys and 4 arrows can actually make a lot more than you might believe. I would have known about some of these very helpful movement tips if I had read the fucking loading screen tips, but I didn't, so it is what it is. Let me spare you the learning curve though, by straight up telling you the most useful and simple movements. When you fall from a large height, you can hold the direction you're going plus the down key to do some sick combat rolls on landing, which lets you negate fall damage, and while rolling you can also hit jump to chain a long leap. If you're a god, you can chain these rolls and jumps indefinitely for extra mobility. If you build up some speed on a flat surface, you can rapidly switch direction to do this sliding turn, which with the jump lets you chain into a badass backflip. During your arc, you can then hold exclusively up or down to throw your spear in either direction. With a strong enough backflip, you can also transition into combat rolls like before. When running, you can quickly crouch and jump to do a slide. This in itself doesn't do much, but when you throw a spear during the slide, it goes way faster and carries a lot more oomph. Not only does this do extra damage, but it also lets you take lizards head on. When a lizard is coming towards you, try to time the slide when it opens its fat mouth and you can skewer it straight through its fucking throat, which does critical damage and stuns the lizard for longer, letting you safely dislodge your spear from its esophagus. Lastly, when you're crawling around in pipes, you can time a jump when you hit the corners to boost your speed and go way faster. This is nowhere near a full movement tech guide, but these are the movements I use most often when going around the map. Just these are more than enough to make you a force to be reckoned with, but if you desire you can go check that Google Doc I mentioned or watch some helpful full tutorials to learn every little trick this game has to offer. I mean, holy shit, you can fucking L-cancel like you're playing Falco on Melee like an absolute tryhard. If you take the time to become a movement master, you can pull all kinds of ninja bullshit in Rain World and clown on the entire traffic chain from the grass to tertiary consumers. Which means that I was wrong again. This game is actually all tomorrow's, plus I have no mouth and I must scream, except it's dying light, and then layered with new age nonsense. Last time I do this bit, I swear. But seriously, I really appreciate the dedication. The devs did not have to go this hard on the game's physics, but they did and it's really fun. In hindsight, it's kind of amazing I made it to the end game area with no movement tech and without killing anything. You live, you learn, I guess. So now you're a true survivor. You know where and how to get your sustenance, how to find shelter, how to fight, and how to run. You've honed your body and your mind to near perfection. You've probably managed to stay at max karma long enough to get the survivor achievement. You've likely hunted multiple different kinds of lizards, and maybe you even got a vulture kill under your belt. So, where do we go now? Well, little scout, the only way to go is up. I learned most of these skills as I made my way up the chimney canopy to reach 5 pebbles of superstructure. This was also around the time I started pondering deeply about what this game was trying to tell me on a thematic level. I spent a few hours alone with my thoughts, jumping over instant death pits and trying to maneuver my way past this jump here in particular by trick-shotting with a grappling worm. Eventually I settled on just taking a gamble and doing a break for it, vultures be damned. I succeeded. I made my way to the wall, which is the outside of Pebbles' structure. I could go down into the overhang underneath him to climb into his eternal systems and reach him that way, but I figured my best option was to instead climb through the outside. I spent some time scouting out the area and getting some food and seeing what obstacles I'd have to overcome. It took quite a few tries and I died some frustrating deaths to ambushing white lizards, not to mention this pack of orange ones here, but through all of it I remained rather calm. I reached a state of tranquility and peace. The inevitabilities of life, its unfairnesses and tribulations no longer held purchase over my mind. Somewhere along the way I stopped troubling myself with things outside my control. I assessed situations better and more rationally without letting the pressure of time or the fear of an untimely death cloud my judgment. I was in Zen. And then it got ruined because holy fuck, let me save you some pain right now. Before you even begin your game, go into the remix settings and turn on this option right here that lets you pick up spears embedded in walls. God, it makes me so irrationally angry that I lose all my spears like this, and it becomes especially clear in this area in particular. If you don't check that option, prepare to backtrack 2 screens every 10 seconds to go get another spear, because you can only carry one on you and they get constantly embedded into this fucking wall. I mean, where else would it go? The game only lets you throw horizontally, how would you even avoid this otherwise? Utter bullshit, I tell you. No idea how motherfuckers played this game and didn't lose their minds before this remix option was available. But I digress. With that small hurdle solved, I eventually made it to the top of the wall. This high up above the clouds, the rain is a non-factor, which gives you an unusual serenity in this otherwise tense game. The rain is symbolic, I suppose. It represents the tribulations of life, the constant struggle for the precious little time we have, and ultimately our inevitable conclusion. I made it past the decayed outer perimeter of the ancients' abandoned metropolis, where they exiled themselves to after destroying their homeworld in their folly and pride. I made it past the upper access shafts, and finally, I reached my destination. The conversation with Five Pebbles is brief and to the point. He gives you an out, a way to escape the cycle for good, or so he says at least. He tells you to get past the farmer race and make your way deep into the earth, past the old ruins of even older civilizations than that of the ancients, and down to the substrata bedrock of the planet. In it you can find an access to the Void Sea and a way out of this repeating cycle. It's risky, and the ancients knew those risks, but still, it's the only option. Also, I fucked up and left my vulture mask in its chamber. I tried to get it back, but the 0G is hard to navigate and Five Pebbles started getting really angry at me, so I wrote it off as a loss. I made my way back down the wall, reflecting on what I had learned across my travels, how far I had come from where I started out. It gave me pause for thought. Once I made my way back to the chimney canopy, an unusual development happened. I didn't mention it until now, but remember that vulture I stole the mask from? This game remembers that, and the simulation never lets go of it. That very same vulture spent my entire run from then on chasing me to the ends of the earth to kill me. Because, as the ancients so clearly demonstrate after all, for a creature so vain as to lose sight of their true self, the mask is everything. It becomes a pseudo-identity of sorts. So we did battle high above the facility grounds, and, at last, I killed it, putting an end to our rivalry for good. Usually I would have felt anger and frustration at this inconvenience, but I didn't. And in hindsight, if I had lost that mask at any earlier point, I would have just rage quit the game since it was my crutch. But now, I wasn't mad. I didn't even think I needed it anymore, and I wasn't mad that it was gone. That this apex predator felt so strongly about me that it chased me across the map made me feel humble and small. It reminded me of my place in the food chain, and that no matter how much I may struggle, I am connected to this ecosystem. I am connected. I am connected. Of course. How could I have been so blind? How could they have been so blind? Did they not see what I so clearly see? Why did I delude myself in the preconceptions of such an arrogant dead people, when the truth has been right in front of my eyes this entire time? Did they not see the ways in which life grows around and through them? Did their corpses not decay into dust? Did their flesh not feed the maggots of the earth? Did they themselves not feed on the bounty of their living land, of which they were but a branch in the tree? Did they not see how they were but a knot in the circle of all things, all of which are bound together? The connection is not a binding chain, it's a vessel of life force, of belonging. Nothing escapes the cycle is everything. Why do they believe themselves separate from it, imprisoned by it, when the very existence of things is reliant upon it? What a society of fools they were, deluded, bickering fools, the whole lot of them. But what must I do now? I think I know. I traversed the upper passageways of the canopy to reach the Sky Islands, and methodically made my way back down to the farmer race. Here, through some trial and error, I learned to use spore puffs to manipulate the AI of the reindeer, these tall, regal, and majestic creatures whose slender, spindly limbs let them and you go through the inaccessible regions to the west. I made my way to the subterranean ruins with relative ease, and even got a chance to meet an echo in person, one of the remnants of the ancients, their sins and self-congratulation made manifest. Even in its tortured state, its ego and pride remained unbroken. The subterranean was a claustrophobic and dangerous maze, but eventually I also made it past its many dangers unscathed, reaching the filtration system once again. It took me no time at all to make my way to the very bottom, where a final access shaft I had gone through before awaited me. I did not make it this far for myself. I made it for the sake of closure, to speak to an old acquaintance.
Oh, you're back. Took you a while.
Yes. Sorry for my delay. I took the time to see the sights on the way back. I found for them a new appreciation.
Truly? Huh. Well, you are quite different now than when we last met. I would have expected no less. So, do you come back to me as a maxed mule lord or whatever you said?
No. I come to you unburdened by such things now. I have seen how my failings bound me, and I am free, even though I have not let go of them, merely reoriented them in a more productive fashion.
What? But that can't be. I see deep into your soul, little one, and I can see that it carries no attachments any longer.
You see poorly, construct. You see no ill, for I have purged it, but my attachments are connections that, though I did not choose, I reflected upon, and found fitting of an enlightened being.
Very well. It is not up to me to argue such things. I know why you've come. You've journeyed far and learned much. You deserve safe passage. So go now. You are free to walk past, into the depths.
Thank you, but I refuse your offer.
Pardon?
I know what lies beyond this path, construct, and I don't want it.
But, little one, it is your only escape.
I desire no escape. Now, let's see what lies beyond your mask.
Wait, what are you doing? No! No! What have you done?
Tell me something, construct. When you leave a rock on the surface, does it not get covered in dust?
What? Yes, of course it does.
Has the void not eaten at the world forever?
So it is assumed.
So where does this new dust come from, you reckon? Your kind dug deep into the earth and built a temple around this place to celebrate the joy of their oblivion. They were wrong. I've come to understand the depths of their delusion in my travels. I have seen how the cycle binds all things, both material and otherwise. We are made of two parts, the body and the spirit. Neither of these can return to nothing, because neither of them came from nothing. Just as all things breathe and grow in unison, consuming themselves in frenzy to regenerate themselves, so too is the spirit a looping circle, an ever-circling substance that dissolves and coalesces back into the world in new forms. Your kind did not leave the cycle, such a thing cannot be done. They simply reform themselves, shed their matter and their spirit to be absorbed back into the collective perpetuality, to be rebirthed in new, more productive forms. They were the eyes and the mind, sensible organs, the part of our universe meant to gaze and reflect upon itself in admiration. But in their pride and their insolence, they believed themselves separate from the world that birthed them. They were not. They were emanations of a universal being, same as all things are.
They were meant to be this world's stewards, and chose instead to be a tumor feasting upon it. They did not leave this world behind. Their intelligence can already be seen reappearing up there in new creatures. I can only hope they will be wiser than those that came before them.
No, that can't be. You're wrong.
Believe whatever you wish to believe. It matters little to me. Look at you. You're a shade. One that the void will hopefully wipe clean to reabsorb back into the cycle soon enough. I have no need of your sophistry. My decision is final. And to you, I bid farewell.
No! You cannot go! Nothing in that world matters. You claim you're connected to it, and yet it exists to grind you down to paste, to mold you again and again until your mind goes numb with sorrow at your trapping. You think this is a game? In 1,000 cycles, in 1,000,000 cycles, in 1,000,000,000 trillion cycles, what purpose will you find?
I will find a part to play in the scheme of life. And you, what purpose do you think your creators found in oblivion? You probably won't be seeing me again. This place is boring. There's nothing to eat, and nothing to fight. Goodbye. Let the record show that I actually did go into the Void Sea, just for completion's sake. However, I don't consider it canon to my save. I still play on that save file from time to time. Believe it or not, I made it through the whole game only exploring like half the map. I didn't even go into the bottom east section, and I never actually met Looks to the Moon in person. I've since managed to make my way to her and gift her a neuron fly, which helps her a bit. And besides, there's a bunch of achievements I didn't get. I'm still hunting for another wizard to get the Dragon Slayer achievement. I've since also gotten Chieftain, which you get from befriending the scavengers enough to be considered a part of the tribe. There's still a lot to be done. A lot of ground to cover, food to stash away, and predators to outsmart. So yeah, that was Rainworld. An absolute spiritual journey of a game, if I do say so myself. Despite my gripes and frustrations, I find it well worth the price, at least the base game. Maybe someday I'll get around to covering the DLC, but if I don't, just the base game is more than a good experience by itself. Oh, by beating the game you also unlock Hunter, which is a hard mode of sorts. It forces you to beat the game on a limited number of cycles. I've tried and I'm yet to be good enough to beat it, but I'll keep trying. Thanks for tuning in and listening to me ramble. Good hunting out there, Skug, and see you another time.